This is Rachel James, 34 years old, youngest partner in her law firm's history, six-figure salary, penthouse apartment. Engagement ring worth more than most people's cars. By every metric society uses to measure success, Rachel James has won. So why, on a Tuesday morning in March, is she standing in her bathroom staring at her own reflection like she's never seen herself before? 2 days before the mirror, Rachel was exactly where she'd planned to be 15 years ago. Harvard Law, top of her class, partner track by 28, partner at 33. She'd executed her life plan with military precision, every milestone hit, every box checked, every expectation exceeded. But here's what nobody tells you about climbing the ladder. Sometimes, when you finally reach the top, you realize you've climbed the wrong building. And by then, you're so high up, you've forgotten what the ground even looks like. Lucas Hunter was perfect. On paper, Yale MBA, private equity, strategic thinker. When he proposed, he'd presented her with a 5-year plan for their marriage, complete with fertility windows and retirement projections. Her mother had cried with joy. Her colleagues had congratulated her on landing him, and Rachel had said yes because that's what you do when someone checks all the boxes. Except Lucas didn't see her. He saw a strategic partnership, a complementary asset, added value, and Rachel was starting to realize she'd become very, very good at being someone's asset. That night, lying in bed next to a man who just referred to their honeymoon as lost productivity, Rachel James had a thought that terrified her. She thought, I don't love him. And then, more terrifying, I don't think I've ever loved him. And then, most terrifying of all, I don't think I've felt anything real in years. Rachel had always been proud of her calendar. It was a work of art. Color-coded efficiency. Every 15-minute block optimized. She'd once told an interviewer that idle time is wasted potential. But sitting at her desk that morning, scrolling through months of relentless scheduling, Rachel James realized something horrifying. She had no idea who she was anymore. If you took away the lawyer, the partner, the fiancé, the daughter who'd done everything right, what was left? That's when it happened. Standing in that bathroom, reading a text from her fiancé about strategic connections, Rachel James made a decision that would change everything. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't planned. It was simply this. I can't do this anymore. Not the wedding. Not just Lucas. All of it. The performance. The optimization. The endless pursuit of a life that had never actually been hers. She'd spent 15 years becoming someone she thought she should be. And now, staring at that stranger in the mirror, Rachel James decided to stop. Just stop. Before we continue, I need to know something. Have you ever looked at your own life and not recognized it? Have you ever felt like you were just performing? Drop a comment right now. I promise, you're not alone. Rachel didn't plan it. That's important. There was no destination, no strategy, no 5-year plan. She just knew she had to leave, immediately. Before the part of her that had been trained to be reasonable could talk her out of it. She pointed at a departure board with her eyes closed and bought a ticket to wherever her finger landed. London. And then, from London, a train to somewhere she'd never heard of. Amberley. A village in the English countryside so small it barely appeared on maps. It was the opposite of everything Rachel had built. Perfect. 24 hours after leaving her penthouse, Rachel James stood on a platform in the middle of nowhere, with no plan, no phone service, and no idea what she was doing. She'd traded a 6-figure salary for, what? A village with one pub and a population of 300? Most people would call this a breakdown. Rachel was starting to think it might be the sanest thing she'd ever done. Noah was the first person in years to look at Rachel and not see her resume. He saw a woman with a suitcase and tired eyes. That was enough. He gave her the room overlooking the village green, refused to take payment in advance. You might hate it and leave tomorrow, and told her the pub served dinner at 7-ish or 8-ish, or whenever Chef Martin finishes his walk. Rachel, who'd scheduled her life in 15-minute increments, Didn't know what to do with Sevenish. It was disorienting. It was wonderful. It was terrifying. Austin Stone, former London architect, now a furniture maker in a village of 300. He'd strategically relocated, as he put it, 3 years ago. Meaning, he'd burned out, broken down, and run away. Just like Rachel, he knew the signs, the too careful movements, the constant phone checking, the way she sat like she might need to sprint at any moment. He'd been her. Rachel wanted to dislike him. He was too relaxed, too casual, too comfortable in his own skin. Everything she'd spent 15 years not being. But when Austin Stone looked at her, he didn't see a lawyer or a failure or a woman having a breakdown. He saw someone who'd been brave enough to jump without a parachute. And for the first time in years, Rachel didn't feel like she had to perform. Pause for a second. What do you think is happening here? Is Rachel having a breakdown or a breakthrough? Is she running away from something or finally running toward herself? Drop your theory in the comments. I'm curious what you think. Wasting time with dignity. That's what Austin called it. Rachel had optimized every moment of her life for 15 years. She'd forgotten what it felt like to do something badly, to try and fail and not have it matter, to spend an afternoon making a single drawer that would have taken Austin 20 minutes and have it be perfectly okay that she'd accomplished nothing. It was excruciating. It was liberating. She hated it. She couldn't stop. While Rachel was learning to plane wood in Amberley, her old life was imploding. Lucas had called 62 hospitals looking for her. Her mother had called the police. Her firm had called in crisis management. Everyone assumed the worst: breakdown, kidnapping, mental health crisis. Because in their world, you didn't just walk away from success. You didn't leave a partnership to sit in a field watching sheep. That wasn't brave. That was insane. But here's what nobody in Rachel's old life understood. Sometimes, stopping is the sanest thing you can do. Sometimes, the real breakdown is pretending everything is fine when you're disappearing from the inside out. This was the moment Rachel James started to crack. Not the bad kind of cracking, the necessary kind. The kind that lets light in. She'd spent 15 years building a life that looked perfect from the outside. But she'd never stopped to ask herself if she actually wanted it. Success became its own justification. She climbed because that's what you did. She achieved because achievement was the point. But sitting on that stone wall, watching sheep graze in English fields, Rachel realized she'd been living someone else's dream. And that dream was killing her. She cried for 20 minutes straight. Ugly crying. The kind that comes from years of holding everything in. Years of being professional, composed, strategic. Years of treating her own emotions like inefficiencies to be optimized away. Austin didn't try to fix it, didn't tell her it would be okay. He just sat next to her on that stone wall and let her shatter. Because sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is witness someone else's breaking without trying to put them back together too quickly. Sometimes, people need to fall completely apart before they can figure out who they actually are. They were all angry. Worried, yes. But mostly angry. Because Rachel had broken the unspoken rule. You don't walk away from success. You don't abandon a partnership. You don't leave a perfect fiancé without explanation. In their eyes, she'd been selfish, irresponsible, ungrateful. But here's what none of them asked. Are you okay? What do you need? How can we help? They asked where she was, when she was coming back, what she was thinking. But nobody asked if she was happy. Because in her world, happiness was optional. Success was mandatory. The silence on the other end of the line was answer enough, because Lucas was a strategic thinker, and strategic thinkers don't fall in love. They identify compatible partners with complementary assets and negotiate mutually beneficial terms. Lucas had never loved Rachel James. He'd loved the idea of Rachel James. And Rachel, who'd spent 15 years being an idea instead of a person, was finally done performing. Rachel's mother had opinions. She'd always had opinions about Rachel's career choices, her relationship choices, her hair, her clothes, her life plan, and Rachel had always listened. Because good daughters listen. Successful daughters make their mothers proud. But sitting in that small room above a pub, Rachel realized she'd spent 34 years living for other people's approval, and she was tired. Her mother tried to argue, used words like responsibility and commitment and what will people think? But Rachel, who'd spent her entire life caring desperately what people thought, found she had no answer to give. Because the truth was, she didn't care anymore. She'd traded her entire life for other people's approval, and the price had been too high. And just like that, Rachel James stopped being a lawyer. No fanfare, no exit interview, no carefully negotiated departure package. She just let it go. The career she'd spent 15 years building, the title she'd worked so hard to earn, the partnership that had defined her, gone. And sitting in that small room, watching lights flicker in cottage windows, Rachel waited to feel regret, panic, the crushing weight of a terrible mistake. But all she felt was light. For the first time in 15 years, Rachel James didn't have a plan. No 5-year strategy. No color-coded calendar. No optimization metrics. And for the first time in 15 years, she wasn't in a hurry to create one. Because she was learning something Austin had learned 3 years ago. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is admit you don't know. Sometimes, being lost is the only way to find yourself. And sometimes, stopping is the first step toward actually living. Rachel James doesn't know when or if she'll return to her old life. She doesn't know if she'll stay in Emberley forever or move on to somewhere new. She doesn't know what she'll do for work, or love, or purpose. But for the first time since she was 19 years old and mapping out her entire future in a college dorm room, Rachel isn't worried about not knowing. Because she's finally learning the difference between living and performing, between achieving and being, between checking boxes and actually feeling something real. And that, it turns out, is worth more than any partnership, any engagement ring, any perfectly optimized life plan. Rachel James stopped, and in stopping, she finally started living. Subscribe.